The vastness of Russia is overwhelming, even to those accustomed to the wide open spaces of America. Huge tracts of eastern Russia are still uninhabited. This is a copy of the Sverdlovsk newspaper from November the 29th, 1968. An article on the front page entitled Berezovsky Dreams, or What Was That?, gives the state-sanctioned account. Translated, the Russian copy reads, 5 glowing balls of light appeared over the horizon and started to move in the direction of the city. 4 of the objects moved in opposite directions, while the 5th began to rapidly lose altitude and soon completely disappeared behind the forest terrain. Several seconds after its disappearance, there was a deafening explosion. So compelling is the existence of several reels of film which seem to back up the story. While rumors of such film first began circulating some years ago, it was not until Vereshchagin led us to the black market dealer in possession of these materials that we got our first look at what could be remarkable new evidence. If this film indeed corresponds with Vereshchagin's story, what we are looking at is the scene of the crash site in Berezovsky as viewed by a camera on top of a military truck. The focal point of this scene is here, and indeed appears to be a disc embedded in the ground. Here we see soldiers exiting the truck, led by a captain. The troops are met by another officer, this one a major, and then they join other soldiers and officers already on the scene. This footage is one of 4 reels of film acquired during our investigation. This film footage certainly seems to depict interest by Russian military personnel in the object that is seen sticking out of the ground. Soldiers, officers, and civilian-clothed agents are deployed around the site, and they appear to be both guarding and examining the object. This is what we found on one of the 4 reels of film obtained in Russia. After viewing the footage, we were able to determine that it was most likely shot with 2 separate cameras, one apparently a handheld camera, which starts out on the approaching truck, and a second one seen here on a tripod. As the soldiers march past, you can see the cameraman turn to follow the troops. Here we cut to the other angle, the point of view from the tripod camera. And here you see the handheld camera as the truck pulls up. Both cameras change vantage points several times during the film, as if to get better views or perhaps under orders of a superior. From this angle, we see yet more troops arrive. Author Veniamin Vereshchagin describes the event.
Весной же 1969 года рабочий местного совхоза.
In the spring of 1969, a collective farmer found some strange remains in the forest not far from Berezovsky,
и сообщил об этом,
and reported that to the local security organs,
те, в свою очередь,
who in their turn asked the neighboring military division of Air Defense troops, PVO, to provide assistance with the investigation. On March 1969, 2 KGB officers examined the discovery site and sealed it off.
Вы знаете, в дальнейшем события приняли более такой масштабный характер. По просьбе КГБ были привлечены.
On the KGB request, a Soviet army unit was brought to the discovery site,
и в результате уже очень тщательных обследований были найдены.
After close examination of the place, they found some wreckage debris of a disc-shaped object
частично
partially sunken to the ground.
Поначалу органы безопасности предполагали,
At first, the KGB thought that the debris
американскому разведывательному самолету или
came from an American spying plane or a Soviet spaceship.
And here you see the man who is probably the head KGB agent directing the cameraman to point his camera toward the disc. A total of almost 1,200 feet of negative were recovered just on this crash site. It is possible that more film was shot, but this is all that we were able to obtain. None of this film depicts the removal of the disc itself, and at no point do we see inside the object. From this angle, we do see the handheld camera shooting behind or inside the disc. However, that footage, if it was, in fact, ever shot, was not included in the cans of film we acquired. We can only speculate that it may still be at large. The questions then become, where did this object come from and how did it come to crash here? And more importantly, what has happened to it since? This former agent was able to confirm interest not only in the 1968 crash near Berezovsky, but in other Soviet attempts to recover UFO documentation and technology. Covered an extraterrestrial vehicle, as they seem to be doing in this footage. They no doubt would have wanted to benefit from its technology.
It's almost of the same quality. It's not a 1980s or 1990s film. The KGB officer that had been looking and touching things looks quite genuine. To me, my gut feeling...
Whether we'll ever know the full truth about the supposed UFO crash in Berezovsky, one thing seems certain. If agents of the KGB or any other branch of the Soviet government did recover parts of a craft made by alien beings, they would have been extremely interested in examining all the materials very closely. This reel contains images of what appears to be a scientific or medical examination of organic body parts. The individuals seen here appear to be forensic pathologists or biological research scientists. Speaking in Russian, they are seen inspecting the specimen, the leader of the procedure describing his actions and the measurements they are taking. After several minutes of this, there is a change in camera angles. Now we see the specimen being more extensively examined.
Придерживайте инструмент. Ткани разрезаются тяжело. Пробуем кусачки. Придерживайте. Ребра пытаюсь перекусить.
Tools are used to cut open what the leader constantly refers to as tissue.
Что-то белое попадает. Очень ригидные ткани. Давайте попробуем другим. Придерживайте. Вы не оцените, какой лоскут.
He also describes parts that are removed as resembling various organs.
Записывайте, достаем внутренние органы, надрезаем похожую на клетчатку внутреннюю ткань.
The camera angle changes again. And finally, the scientists are seen posing for the camera, holding up various samples of the dissection. If this footage is authentic, it represents one of the greatest scientific discoveries of all time. One must wonder where this film was shot. and what happened to the specimen seen. If this is footage of a genuine scientific examination, what happened to the results? What did the Soviets learn, and what have they done with that knowledge? Did agents of the KGB have reason to keep this secret for so many years? Certainly there are more questions here than answers. Next, Dr. Ryan commented on some of the specific medical procedures.
All right, what's happening here is that they're using dissecting scissors to open up the sternum, which is a common procedure at that time. He's using the proper tool. The way they're holding and using the various tools looks correct, which indicates to me these people know what they're doing. I would say there's little doubt that these are actual Russian medical people. Now, if you look closely at this procedure here, which is repeated several times in this footage, what they're doing is removing a piece of material. The one doctor refers to it as an organ or resembling an organ. Then the diener snips off a small sample which is placed in a specimen jar for later analysis. Well, that's exactly what would be done in a forensic case or in the case of scientific research, for instance, if some new species had been discovered. They would remove very small pieces for later chemical and microscopic examination. The lead doctor also mentions a structure he describes as resembling ribs. And here you can see what indeed resembles a rib cage, as if this was the torso of some anthropoid or human-like organism.
Finally, though Dr. Ryan was unable to identify the subject matter, she believes that the techniques were consistent with those practiced in the Soviet Union during the late 1960s. We have little information about the specimen seen here, other than the pathologist's description and the KGB code name, Sverdlovsk Miget. If something not from this earth had been recovered, it would have been brought to a classified military base high in the Ural Mountains, where super-secret operations are being conducted since the Second World War. This incredible footage depicts members of the Soviet armed forces and what are believed to be two KGB agents inspecting and recovering a crashed flying saucer, to have been involved in the operation back in 1969. We found ex-KGB staffer Pavel Alexandrovich Klimchenkov living in seclusion in the Bryansk region of central Russia. He remembers the strange wreckage found in Beryozovsky.
At first, everyone believed that those debris were parts of some novelty aircraft manufactured in the United States or England. But having done some measuring and material analysis, we came to the conclusion that none of the domestic or foreign manufacturers known to us could have produced this apparatus, at least not in the conditions existing on this planet. It was then that an order came to transport the debris to the base in Mytishi near Moscow. Together with several other officers, I was assigned to provide safety and security to these materials during their transportation.
Most telling was this top-secret KGB report specifically referring to Operation Sverdlovsk Miget and describing in detail the recovery operation at Beryozovsky. This document mentions the crashed disc, the organic remains, and the filming itself. There was also this secret order from the Soviet Ministry of Defense requesting assistance from military unit 67527. We looked closely at such elements of the footage as the uniforms and the arm patches worn by the soldiers. These patches seem consistent with the patch worn by such Soviet Army air defense companies as military unit 67527.
They're all wearing winter coats, which don't appear to have much in the way of insignia on them. And that is not out of character for the winter coats. They would generally not contain much in the way of identification. These are all members of the same unit. I can see that the weapons are AK-type weapons. The main battle weapon of the Russian army, even up through today's date, is the automatic Kalashnikov weapon. Yeah, it's clearly an AK, fixed stock, birch stock, no muzzle brake, milled receiver, no question about it. That also seems to be consistent with the muzzles of the weapons that I can see in this film.
In addition, we had notes from the scientific examination of the recovered organic specimen, which seemed consistent with the soundtrack of the dissection footage. With so many elements in seeming consistent alien craft and its occupant 3 decades ago.
If members of the Soviet army had knowledge, then what happened to these individuals? And if they can't be found today, why not?
In the course of our investigation, our goal was to follow every lead, to search for every scrap of information regarding the incident so named Operation Screengit Miget. The tenuous paper trail we have reconstructed using recovered government documents led us eventually to a lab of the former All-Union Scientific Research Institute of Biology. In attempting to obtain records on the individuals depicted in the dissection footage, we turned up these additional documents. 3 death certificates, all dated March the 24th, 1969, within a week after records indicate the examination was performed. Cause of death for all 3. Suruma state-run institute is now a private teaching center known as the Moscow Medical Institute. That this is the same facility as seen in the film footage becomes obvious with a comparison of such fixtures as the stonework tables and the distinctive tiling on the floors. The difference is that one-time experimental procedures have been replaced by routine anatomy lessons with plenty of hands-on experience. Secretive operations are now openly administered educational opportunities. But we did find in the basement of the building remnants of this facility's past, reminders of a time when procedures here were not open to the public or subject to public scrutiny.